International relations expert John Stremlau joins us now for some analysis on this precarious situation in Niger. Prof, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. The bloc Ecowas playing hardball. Is this just an empty threat, or is ECOWAS good to act on its commitment to restoring a democratically elected administration?
ECOWAS has been very effective in the past on the Mono River region, which I observed elections there, transitional elections from conflict to peace in the four Mono River, Sierra Leone and Liberia and Cote d'Ivoire and Guinea back in the day. But right now, this is a very confused situation because the Sahelian Five are some of the poorest countries in the world. Four of them are members of ECOWAS, namely Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, and Niger. And now four of them have had coups, and the Wagner Group is very active in Burkina Faso and Chad and in Mali. And now the generals are talking about getting the Wagner Group to help them defend Niger, but Niger is dirt poor except for uranium, and they do export uranium. They're the seventh largest producer, and I expect that the Wagner Group would make that a condition for sending in the mercenaries again, and it's a real mess, and I don't see what ECOWAS is going to be able to do, but their credibility is on the line. There are 15 members in states in ECOWAS, but this is really the across the Sahel, and they didn't do anything about the coups in Mali and Burkina Faso and in Chad. So we'll see what happens.
The blocking of air traffic between Europe and Southern Africa, is that going to come into play here, where we could see European countries, maybe France in particular, saying, well, because of the airspace closure, I beg your pardon, then you're making things harder for us, and therefore we've got to now come into this conflict?
Well, you know, the Macron is not likely to want to risk too many French lives, although there are 1,500 troops that are still, I believe, in Niger. But the evacuation of French citizens has proceeded until this closure of the airspace, and Macron has advised that the French who are still there hunker down and stay out of the limelight because there's likely to be a lot of reprisals. On the other hand, it's very difficult to know, you know, the dirt poor rural Africans who are mostly the 27 million in Niger are really not in Niamey, where the capital has been agitated by this coup, and we don't know what's going to happen to the President Bazoum, who was duly elected in 2021, and that was a step forward for democracy in the region. But it's a region it's been ravaged by Islamic fundamentalists and poverty and stealing by generals and the Wagner Group. So I guess we should go to bed in South Africa and be grateful we're not in the Sahel.
You've already mentioned the uranium interest that could possibly be an attraction for the Wagner Group. What could possibly be the interests for example, the U.S., Europe, China, and Russia in Niger?
Well, it all comes down to the Wagner Group tends to want to have payment up front in terms of control over the mining industries of Mali or Burkina Faso. And in the case of Niger, whether these generals are enlightened or this was just a grudge match between a general and the president, who reportedly, but we don't know for sure, was going to oust him fairly soon. So he reacted. But now they're in a rock and a hard place, and so they'll probably, according to Al Jazeera, they've invited the Wagner Group to come in and do a feasibility. And for all of the closing of the airspace, there have been planes flying between Burkina Faso and Niger, and so we're going to have to wait and see. But the Americans also saw Niger as the last holdout for democracy in that troubled region, and yet they didn't do anything when Mali fell and Burkina Faso fell to military takeovers. It's very difficult to put your soldiers at risk, but now I think Nigeria has, 53% of Niger are Hausas, and that's the northern predominant tribe in very complex and diverse Nigeria. But the north is predominantly Hausa, and as is in Niger. So Tinubu and the president of Nigeria has put a red marker down, but they haven't honored that so far. It was supposed to be a military action against Niger yesterday, Sunday, and it didn't happen. So they're meeting and they're talking, and we hope something comes out of it because you don't want to see loss of life. But in fact, under the civilian president, the number of people who were endangered over the last year has fallen 45%, I believe. I saw a figure recently that seemed pretty accurate or authoritative. So I don't know. I wish I could be helpful to you.
So you got as you put it, Nigeria, Senate on Friday authorizing the deployment of the country's military should, of course, the event come to pass, a possible ECOWAS intervention. And then you also have Nigeria cutting off power to Niger, plunging most of the country into darkness. What do you think the outcome of the Thursday meeting is going to be? I mean, are they going there to prepare for war? Or are they possibly going to find some other political solution to this situation?
Well, it's a very difficult to forecast, obviously, and yet we can be certain that the credibility of ECOWAS is on the line, finally, in this case. ECOWAS has, as I said at the outset, performed very good peace-promoting, transitional promoting in the Mono River. Unstable back in the 80s. It was terrible violence in Liberia and Sierra Leone and Guinea and Cote d'Ivoire, and it helped to stabilize it. But now it's 15 members, four of whom are of the Sahelian band that is turning militarily. And so how are they going to mobilize some of those who are concerned about this situation? The democracies, tiny Benin or tiny Gambia, I don't think they have much to contribute. Ghana is a little bit bigger, and Liberia and Senegal, but yet it's very difficult. Nigeria is ravaged in the north by Islamic fundamentalists, and Tinubu has a hard time preserving security in his own country, and yet he's now cast that Niger will be a target of an ECOWAS intervention, and the Secretary General of ECOWAS is based in Abuja, in Nigeria. So we'll see what happens on Thursday, but they didn't honor their deadline in the sand of Sunday yesterday, and so Wagner has been invited in, and I don't know what the story is on that front, but I would expect that they would negotiate a contract and get some uranium in return and go in and commit the kind of human rights abuses that they've been doing in Mali and in Burkina Faso and to some extent in Chad. So anyway, it's a very real mess, and I'm glad you're covering it, but I wish I could be more authoritative. But I'm just trying to keep up with the details of what's going on there, and it's very confused.
Prof, Appreciate your intervention tonight. Thank you very much for coming on.
My
Professor
pleasure.
John Stremlau, international relations expert there, trying to put our heads in to make sense of the situation of what's happening there in Niger.